Good morning to our listeners. Welcome to TechCentral. This is the TCS Plus show, and I'm James Erasmus, and I'm very pleased to be your host today. But I'm also very pleased to have Anna Collard back in studio with us. Anna Collard is a Senior Vice President and an evangelist of all things cybersecurity at KnowBe4 Africa. Anna, welcome.
Thanks, James. Good to be back.
Anna, you and I have spoken quite a few times, and we've spoken quite often about cybersecurity and the importance of cybersecurity. And I think that our listeners are also aware of the environment and the threats that face them. We hope they are, at least. But are they aware of what's coming? 2023 has definitely served some gremlins. I think a lot of organizations have been on the front foot, and they've been quite proactive about what to expect in the cybersecurity world. But you've traveled a lot, actually extensively this year. More recently, you were at the World Economic Forum in Switzerland at the cybersecurity conference there. And I'd love to hear some of your predictions and understandings of what you think might be relevant to anticipate going into 2024.
Yeah, thanks, James. And look, I always find it difficult to call it a prediction because you're always wrong. So I'd rather maybe say those are reflections. So I'd rather prefer to say, well, those are the things that are picked up in both at the WEF cybersecurity meetup, but then there's also a couple of other conferences that I was quite privileged to partake in. Like, in fact, just in Stellenbosch here in South Africa last week, we had the ThreatCon, which brought together academia, government, and industry, which was really, really good as well. And and it's just interesting to reflect on these findings. And one of the biggest things I guess that I think that we will see coming, though, because particularly with the elections happening in the States, is more use of sort of deepfake technology, particularly in the use of political manipulation. And that's something that's quite worrying because the accessibility to create these deepfake tools. So maybe just, I don't know, as a quick explain, I don't know if most of your audiences, they probably know, but maybe for anyone who doesn't know, deepfake just stands for a combination of deep learning, which is a subset of machine learning, a subset of AI. So using deep learning technology, and fake stands for a fake creation of existing audio, video, or even image material. So what it can be used for is to create new versions, let's say, for example, of a video of yourself. And all I need is 30 seconds of your voice, for example. And then I can recreate that deepfake, making it say anything I wanted to say, and it will sound like James, even though it wasn't you. And, like this has been around for quite some time, but I think the accessibility and the sort of the ease of use of these generative AI solutions have just made it so much easier for bad actors to exploit that technology for malicious use. And most of us would have seen like the fun versions, of the Obama deepfakes or that Tom Cruise version, etc. But we actually had, and this was an example that I was in Dubai as well a couple of weeks ago, and the Dubai, funnily enough, they have a minister of AI, and I forgot his name, but he told the story of how he received a WhatsApp voice note of someone that he has dealt with in the past, telling him about some new, investment opportunity between the Bill Gates Foundation and the, obviously the Dubai government or the UAE government. And it sounded legit. It was the voice of the person that he dealt with. He then said, that, and the opportunity sounded quite amazing. Then that contact sent him video material of himself on holiday, which he then thought that was a bit odd because this is like a business relationship, and he in the past wouldn't have exchanged that kind of things. But he still sort of, was in the, like, believing it. And only when the request was made to transfer an initial amount of money to a bank account in China, he then realized, no, this is like a very targeted, sophisticated deepfake manipulation trying to defraud him or the organization. So that was just one example, and I think we'll see many more. We had the head of the African Union. I mean, this was just a prankster, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that has been.
Mutafaki.
Yes, that's it.
Mutafaki is the chairman of the African Union.
Exactly, and the pranksters recreating fake versions of him, and then getting so far as getting into phone conversations with other heads of states. So this is
Crazy.
This is just that was a prank, but imagine now being used for political manipulation, for swaying public opinion, really driving that
voter
polarization.
registration.
Exactly. And all of this, it's we already live in this awful world that is so fragmented and polarized. And these kind of mechanisms just help actors that want that chaos. They purposefully drive that wedge between different groups. And that unfortunately makes it, that's something that I foresee will be used even more so in the next coming month, particularly during the US election. And unfortunately, a side effect. Sorry?
No, you go ahead.
No, I think a side effect of all of this is also that people then start not trusting anything anymore. So we have this complete culture of mistrust. And even when you read authentic news, let's say, or you see authentic material, people then don't trust it anymore. So that's the other side effect that comes with this technology, that this whole journalistic process. And unfortunately, with social media, what used to be sort of a journalistic gateway that was in place to make sure we only see properly researched material, properly verified sources, that's been thrown out the window with everybody now being able to share whatever they want on social medias. And unfortunately, people being emotive fall for that and then share it even more so. So it is like this is something I also find personally like probably one of the biggest issues that we faced with, and one of the most in fact, there was a quote that I used by Caldwell and colleagues or other researchers, and in their research report, they said that deepfakes are ranked as one of the most worrying uses of AI, particularly in the realm of political manipulation. And I would agree with that.
I'm sure. And thanks for laying out that landscape, because I can imagine there's a number of different agendas happening and on the table going into 2024. It's worth knowing that these are worth considering and putting on that agenda to look out for, but really understanding the context of it. And I think importantly, what you're also emphasizing here is this is not unique to any one country, continent, or parts of this world. And yes, we may be sitting here in Johannesburg, South Africa, but it's by no means unique to us, or are we protected from it? Actually, if anything, especially with our elections coming up next year, we're as susceptible to deep fakes as an example of your cybersecurity reflection as anything else. Could we talk a bit about some of the other topics you may want maybe raising? And I know that you've written about quite extensively recently, which is social engineering. We've touched on AI, and I know you want to go more deeply into that, but a little bit about social engineering, please, Anna.
So social engineering is the art or the science of hacking humans, and it's still today it's still one of the biggest or the most prominent or most popular form of gaining access into an environment is through hacking a human rather than trying to break through the technology. So it doesn't matter what report you read, but in most cases, if there was a data breach, if it's a cyber extortion or a ransomware attack, and whatever it is, it very often starts with a person that gets targeted either by phishing emails or even nowadays by the phone as well, and then installs something that they shouldn't be installing, or clicks on something they shouldn't be doing, or sharing information that they shouldn't. And then once the perpetrator or the adversary is on that person's machine, they then move laterally across the environment and steal the data or do whatever they want to do. But this is the sort of human factor of cybersecurity that we've obviously spoken about quite extensively. Sure. And unfortunately, with in the past you could sort of teach people or educate them about, look for spelling errors and like the sort of obvious red flags that you would look out for in phishing communications or phishing emails. But nowadays with obviously again, like the accessibility to generative AI tools, even though if you go to ChatGPT and you ask it, write me a phishing email, it's not quite that straightforward. Like it has some boundaries built in, but cyber criminals do have access to jailbroken versions of that or large language models that don't have these boundaries or those controls built in. And they can then use these automated tools to create much more sophisticated versions of social engineering attacks, be that a audio, so a voice version, like over the phone, or a phishing email, and then obviously distribute it automatically as well, and use AI again in not just the creation of the actual content, but also in the, like I mentioned, in the distribution and in the exploitation of possible vulnerabilities that come with that. So it just, like we, and on our side, our life got easier by using these tools. So did they, or is the criminals' life getting easier? And
it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah, exactly. It always is. And I think the one thing to particularly being aware of is that and this is more of a future thing, but the scary thing, and again, this goes back to this use of deepfake technology in social engineering attacks, is that you can then not just manipulate people for political reasons, but you can manipulate them to believe that it's their CEO or the business supplier or somebody else from the company calling them, or reaching out to them, or even having a Zoom conversation with them, and you're falling for it. And there's been cases already, like there's been actually quite an interesting case of a lady that was basically impersonated. So somebody else pretended to be her to get in and doing a deepfake version during an interview, got the job only to get on and then steal information. And the real person, only found out after the fact when the company that she didn't apply for herself, but this other person did, reached out to say, why are you not pitching up for work? And she said, but I've never started working here. So there are all these weird, or another, a real example I think that the listeners should be aware of and tell their families about is that it's called the virtual kidnapping. It's, again, a deepfake version of, which is awful, but like using the voice of your child and then creating, scenes of distress, pretending that they've kidnapped your child and then wanting you, to pay. Like, again, using an emotive, triggering emotions.
And it really is a crazy world. I think you alluded to that earlier, and these cyber criminals are becoming more and more sophisticated. What we need to do is we need to become more sophisticated. We need to upskill ourselves and actually train ourselves in what to expect, so we can anticipate it, but we need to be on the offensive, not just the defensive. So taking that into account, what are some of the guides you might advise towards in terms of preparing mentally for this space? Taking a deep breath and actually really being ready for cybersecurity as opposed to reactive.
Yeah. So as an individual or as an organization?
I think as an organization, actually, but maybe the organization can influence the individual.
Yeah. So I think, and this is also one of the other trends that I've picked up in all these conversations, is that in organizations, we have to stop expecting one person or one team to be solely responsible for cybersecurity. It's just not, it's not feasible to do that anymore with all these different threats coming at us. And if we look at other industries like the aviation industry, for example, they don't blame the pilot only if things go wrong, right? Like you sort of distribute the risk across multiple departments. And it's the same with organizations today, is that you see that cybersecurity professionals are actually, there's been a research done in Australia that the burnout level of amongst cybersecurity professionals is higher than amongst like first emergency responders, which is also very high usually. So there really is there's a skill shortage problem that we have. There's this increase in sophistication of threats and 24/7 threats, and that lack of appreciation or lack of understanding how complicated it is actually to defend. So we have to really raise that up and get leaders to understand, to have organizational resilience, and prepare for this future that we all have to become responsible in cybersecurity. So it goes beyond just the CISO or the security team. And to do that,
just capitalizing on your example of a pilot, I almost feel as if the strategic priority of cybersecurity positions the cybersecurity experts in one's organization a little bit like air traffic control.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. And like if something goes wrong, they have black boxes to look into it. And it's not just, there's so many different, obviously there's a lot of automation as well that's already been at play in airplanes. So I think we can learn a lot from other industries that have dealt with risk for a very long time and been doing mature risk management processes. But the one thing that we can do from a organizational and then filtering it down to an individual level is, in a way, and we spoke about this before, is the cyber mindfulness. And I spoke about it the other day, about this concept of zero trust, which is like a principle we use in cybersecurity, whereby, nothing is really trusted. So anything that comes in needs to be verified. And if we apply that to consumers or to people consuming content online, and we apply like a zero trust mindset, it's a little bit similar to the mindfulness mindset, where we say, well, instead of just reacting to whatever's coming in, instead of reacting to the emotions that this content might trigger, let's just take a pause and then verify if this is actually authentic, like whether, is it a request to do a payment? Is it a request to share information? Or maybe I should double check. Or I'm feeling very strongly triggered, like it's like a emotive content, that whether that's political or otherwise, to just take a breather before you share it or before you respond to it. And I think that this will help us in so many ways, like whether it's going into future metaverse type environments where we will be exposed to even more of this kind of stuff, or having to deal with the current geopolitical conflict, where you get bombarded with very let's call it emotive content from both sides. So it's really important to help gain that grounding again, applying that sort of, well, I'm not trusting anything just yet, or using like a healthy dose of skepticism. It doesn't mean we become completely paranoid. Like, we must still, be out there and enjoy the benefits that come with technology, but just have like that sort of, a healthy sense of skepticism and mindfulness when you, and thoughtfulness when you consume any sort of content.
And I was just going to say, I'd encourage any of our listeners to go back and listen to some of our previous podcasts, which focus specifically on mindfulness in cybersecurity. And you use the word, breathe. It seems like an obvious statement to make, but so all too often we press send far too quickly, or reply all too quickly. Just take a deep breath. Think about what you've received, why you might have received it, and respond accordingly, and respond with level of expertise. So if you don't necessarily, as the individual or the organization, have that level of expertise, find them, seek that guidance before you perhaps press that big scary red button accidentally. And I think that as you talk about people being overstressed, and I'm sure that everyone is massively stretched at the moment, leading up into the sort of wind down at the end of the year. We've just had a sort of chaotic period of Black Friday and also other activities that put pressure on organizations. And as soon as one takes a foot off the pedal and sits back and relaxes, that's when the sophistication kicks in, because they anticipate that. So being really aware of the environment is what I was alluding to, and that environment is not. You can't operate that environment in a silo. And I think the idea that you mentioned about collaboration is definitely something that our listeners might want to take into consideration, in that your organization isn't a silo, and think about how you could perhaps work more collaboratively with other organizations to create a greater force against this evil.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, this whole concept of neighborhood watch, that's also a perfect example of collaboration for safety, right? And we can't defend against this. We can't expect the government to just do it for us. That's not going to happen, not with our resources. No. But we can, we do have some really good people in cybersecurity in South Africa. Like a lot of the banks, obviously, they have fantastic teams, and there is more exchange between both industry as well as public sector. But we have to do even more of that. Do knowledge sharing, work together when there's incidents, and also do more to address the skill shortage. And by the way, this is also like a pathway out of poverty. Like if we can skill up more kids or more people in these emerging technologies, which is where we need more people, we are providing an opportunity to people that are currently unemployed.
Good point. Yeah, I love that. And I think that if we could, motivate more internships and other type of programs that expose the young learner, the person coming into the workplace, people looking to change their careers.
And that's exactly, James, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I'm actually involved in an initiative called the MIDO Cyber Academy, which is doing exactly that. Where and this is sponsored by KnowBe4 and the UK FCDO office for like this year and next year. And then we take 20 or 21 kids out of, sort of disserviced or disadvantaged environments, and then they go through like a cybersecurity and a life skill crash course. The aim is that they actually have to all write the exam next week. They have to do the CompTIA Security Plus. And the idea is then that they're obviously not experts after 8 months, but that they are way more ready for internship placements. And the appeal really here to the listeners maybe is to be more open to taking in youngsters and giving them this experience, because that's one of the biggest problems, is that companies, they always want people with experience, but you have to start somewhere, the young person, right? So give them the project work, the internships, even if it's like a remote kind of thing. That's what we need more of, is that allowing people that want to become cybersecurity experts, expose them to real life problems, because that actually helps them more than any other certification. So we do need internship placements for these kids. They all graduate in February. So if anyone is listening, please reach out or look at mido.co.za. That's the website. We need internship opportunities.
Thanks, Annie. Yeah, absolutely. And I too know some people who might actually take you up on that, because I genuinely believe that 2024 is going to be a year where a lot of the reflections you've shared with us today are going to drive some change that puts us on the map of being very defensive, very proactive about our potential threats and the risks to our economy, the risks to our organizations, and the risks to us as individuals. So I think these are some fascinating insights, and thank you very much. Just as a closing comment, one of the things you talked about more recently, I think, whilst at the World Economic Forum, was emerging markets. Can you touch a bit on that, please? Maybe as a good way to put a bit of ribbon around this conversation.
Yeah, I think, and you mentioned it early on, is that these problems that we faced with they global problems. The skill shortage, the rise of AI in the offensive use, etc. But we are not excluded from any of that. In fact, we probably, and this is where unfortunately we without having the same resources and budgets that other governments have, that have whole departments that deal with cybersecurity, we are a little bit on the back foot here, and we have underfunded and underprioritized cybersecurity on the continent, and that unfortunately puts us on the sort of attractive map for example, cyber extortionists that will maybe think we like an easy fruit to
target.
Yeah, easy target. So it's important that we acknowledge that and prepare for more, realistic threats next year that are coming. We've seen like an increase in cyber extortion or ransomware attacks in general in this region, and I think this is not going to go away expect the opposite. So,
Okay.
yeah, prepare for it. Hopefully it won't happen, but it's better to be prepared than
Thanks, Anna.
Yeah.
And I think I mentioned it being on the CISO's agenda and definitely something in planning going into 2024. And that strategic priority is actually everybody's priority.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just the people sitting in the air traffic control. Have we lost? Thank you. It's not just those sitting in air traffic control monitoring the situation and have eyes on the ground. It's also people behind the scenes who can anticipate, protect, and not expose themselves or their organization to undue threat and actually create that more vigilant environment that we all think that we have until it's too late.
Yep, exactly.
And this has been fascinating, and I really encourage our listeners to not only listen to this podcast through our different channels, either accessible through our website or YouTube, but also to share it. Share it as food for thought, because I think the leadership and the thought leadership that you bring, Anna, is really insightful. And we now have a catalog of really useful segues into different areas of cybersecurity that you shared with us. And I think that everybody who has access to this should be considering sharing it and making it part of an agenda, and also reaching out to KnowBe4 Africa and understanding what benefits there are to upskilling, training, and being cyber ready. So, Anna Collard, from me, James Erasmus at TechCentral, we're very, very grateful. Thank you so much for your time. Thoroughly enjoyed talking to you and look forward to our next chat.
Thank you so much for having me.